Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our Rant series. Today is Wednesday, October the 17th. Today we are going to talk about, and yes, I'm back from a little bit of a hiatus. My son's wedding was spectacular, lots of fun, so I'm back to get back into all this content stuff here on the YouTube channel. So our rant today is centered on, and I got asked to do this by a number of you viewers, and once I took a look at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2019 inductee list, I said, you know what, I'm going to do a little rant on this because once again, the Hall has put together a list of acts and bands and what have you that some of them are pretty damn questionable. So we're going to take a look at that today, and I'm going to give you my opinion on the whole nonsense. So here is the full list. I'm just going to kind of read this off to you. So we got Def Leppard, okay? We've got Devo, Janet Jackson, Josh Prime, Kraftwerk, LL Cool J, the MC5, Radiohead, Rage Against the Machine, Roxy Music, Rufus featuring Chaka Khan, Stevie Nicks, The Cure, The Zombies, and Todd Rundgren. So, some cool names on there that I think deserve to be on there, that deserve to be in the Hall. Some leftovers from the previous years. Sadly, some ones from the last year or two that didn't make it in, that all of a sudden are gone from the list of nominees, like Judas Priest, did fairly well for themselves last year in the fan voting, but unfortunately didn't make it in. They're all of a sudden gone, but yet you've got LL Cool J and Janet Jackson, which I'm pretty sure they've been on the ballot for the last 2 years, back yet again. Radiohead was on the ballot last year. They didn't make it in. They're back yet again. My opinion, all right, let's go through each of these here, all right? So Def Leppard. I think Def Leppard belongs on this list. So Def Leppard obviously burst on the scene in the very, very early 80s. They were one of the kind of new wave of British heavy metal bands that kind of burst out there alongside Saxon and Iron Maiden and so many other very cool acts, and eventually became a pretty big hit machine, more of like a kind of, hard, they kind of strayed away from metal and became just a really good British hard rock act that really took, especially here in North America, by storm. Def Leppard were huge throughout most of the 80s into the early 90s. They've had their careers slipped a little bit over the last couple decades, but still a very popular band, a number of top-selling albums, tons of hit singles. You know what? Def Leppard belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Devo, kind of like a novelty act, right? Devo had like one or two hit singles. They weren't around for too long, and very unique band. They wore the stupid hats, and they had this kind of like electro pop, new wave type of thing. I'm going to say no to Devo. Sorry, guys. You were kind of a cool little act for a couple of years, but I don't think you deserve to be. They didn't do enough to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Janet Jackson, again, an enormous artist, sold tons of albums and tours and singles and whatnot. Not really rock and roll, right? There's probably a reason why she hasn't got in there. If Michael's going to be in, you probably should put Janet Jackson in. I'd opt to say yes, even though it's not rock and roll. But if we're going by what's happened in the past, Janet Jackson, pretty influential, mega selling artist. So I'm going to say, okay, Janet should get in at some point. John Prime, I'll be honest, I'm not really sure who that is, so I'm going to skip right over that. I know I've heard his name before, but I don't know who John Prime is. Kraftwerk, again, another kind of novelty band, not really rock and roll, more like the electronic side of things. I know a lot of people like Kraftwerk. I haven't listened to a lot of them, so I'm kind of at a point where I really can't offer much of an opinion. I'm going to say no just because, all right? LL Cool J, sorry, rap doesn't get in my opinion. I know he's a pretty popular guy. He's an actor now, doesn't do much music anymore. But again, there's a reason why he hasn't gotten in the last couple of years. Was he influential at all? Not really, in my opinion. So I'm going to say no to LL Cool J. The MC5, very cool band. I dig him, especially, Kick Out the Jams album. I mean, it's a great album. But again, another one of those acts that kind of like their time in the spotlight was so brief. I know they were kind of influential, but no real hit singles. You know, two of their albums I think sold fairly decently. You know, their impact was so short and brief. As much as I like them, I don't think they qualify either. So we're going to skip the MC5. Radiohead, another band. I think Radiohead were never really huge. I know the critics love them. They always had their fan base. Again, not many top-selling albums. Their albums never sold a ton. They had a couple that did fairly well, but they were more of a band that the critics really loved, and they had a cult following, and that was kind of about it. I'm going to say no to Radiohead, too. I know a lot of people dig them, but I don't see it myself. Rage Against the Machine, man, it's just like, I have a hard time saying, yes, Rage Against the Machine should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when acts like Judas Priest and Kansas and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Jethro Tull, who have been around far longer, sold a shitload many more albums and tours and singles than Rage Against the Machine. I know they were a big 90s band into the early 2000s. I get it. They had those 2 albums that are pretty fucking good, right? But I'm sorry. There are other acts and bands that need to be in before Rage Against the Machine. In my opinion, they got to wait a little bit. They got to wait. Roxy Music. I dig Roxy Music. Are they Hall of Fame worthy, though? I don't know about that. Some great albums. Very cool, quirky band. But again, never sold a ton, never had a ton of hit singles, not overly noteworthy on the concert trail. Were they highly influential? It's debatable. Like I said, I like them. I just don't know if they're Hall of Fame worthy. And again, I'm going to go back to some of the bands I just mentioned before. Kansas, ELP, Styx, Jethro Tull, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, all should be in before a band like Roxy Music. I dig them. I just don't know if they're really... You know what I'm saying? Rufus featuring Chaka Khan. Again, not really rock and roll, but man, Chaka Khan and Rufus, they had a ton of really good hits. That's kind of, more of like the R&B soul funk type of thing. It's debatable. I could sway that way. I'm not really sure. Now, Stevie Nicks is already in with Fleetwood Mac. And I know that Stevie Nicks' solo career, she had a bunch of hits, had top-selling albums, a bunch of tours. I just don't know if her solo career is strong enough to warrant her getting in again on her own. Yeah, maybe. I mean, she's a legendary figure. I'm going to say yes to Stevie Nicks, just because. The Cure, again, not a huge selling band, but man, a lot of really solid selling albums, a lot of hit singles, a lot of people were into them. I think for The Cure, they were more influential than anything else. I'm going to say yes to The Cure. The Zombies. I like the Zombies, but man, there's another one of those bands that like 1 or 2 hits and done. Again, a big band in the 60s for a short period of time. They've been carrying over the Zombies the last couple nominations. But again, one of those bands, it's like, how much longer are you going to keep them on the list when they're not getting voted in? I'm going to say no to the Zombies. Last but not least, Todd Rundgren. I'm a huge Todd Rundgren fan. I think Todd Rundgren has been one of the most underrated and underappreciated artists of the last 45, 50 years. And I absolutely think Todd Rundgren should get in. He had a bunch of really top-selling singles. His albums were never huge sellers, but he had a couple that did very, very well in the early, late 70s. He's been kind of, sputtering his career ever since then. But, his impact on the 70s and the early 80s, not just as a solo artist, but as a member of Utopia, and certainly as a producer. He produced some, great selling albums. He produced Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell. He produced the XTC album. God, I'm forgetting the name of it right now. He produced Grand Funk Railroads Were an American Band. He did some really, really good productions. Don't just ignore my dog back there who's protesting. So Todd Rundgren, yes, and a bunch of hit singles, and just an all-around great singer, great songwriter, great musician. I'm saying yes to Todd Rundgren. So in this list, if it's up to me, and I forget how many they do, 5, I think, at a time. Anyway, I'm going to tell you the ones I would vote in. Todd Rundgren, definitely. The Cure, definitely. Stevie Nicks, definitely. Rufus and Chaka Khan, I'm kind of on the fence about. Roxy Music, Rage, I'm going to tell them to wait. Janet Jackson, Def Leppard, definitely. So we got Def Leppard, Stevie Nicks, The Cure, Todd Rundgren. I'm going to pick one more. You know what? I'm going to give it to Janet Jackson, just because, huge artist, sold more records than probably almost anybody else on this list. So that's my 5. Okay. And I'm sorry if some of you are watching and like, how can he pick Janet Jackson over the MC5 or Roxy Music or whatever? I'm looking at this based on longevity, album sales, hit singles, tours, influence, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going with right now. I think it's a pretty good list. But overall, I'm finding this list pretty fucking lacking, in my opinion. I can't wait till we get a list where it's like, some of these bands that we've been talking about for years, and they finally get in. And I'll probably do another episode where I talk about here are my 15 or 20 acts that have been omitted from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame who need to be in there, according to me, right? So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're on the mighty YouTube. Go online to rockandrollhallofFame.com, whatever the hell. Put in your vote for whoever you'd like in there. Let's see what happens. But I know some of us are going to be disappointed by who actually gets voted in, but whatever. It's the way it is. I know most people who are really into music don't give a shit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, including myself. But I kind of like when bands that I've really appreciate and respect get in. I think it's kind of a cool thing. So anyway, we'll see you real soon, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.